I was 33 years old when I learned just how cruel family could be. The day started like any other. I was finishing a double shift at work, exhausted but grateful that I was finally getting my life back on track after a difficult divorce. My 8-year-old daughter, Lily, was spending the afternoon with my mother while I worked. It wasn't unusual. Despite our complicated relationship, I thought I could trust her with her own granddaughter. Before we begin, I want to ask you something. What country are you watching from? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoy emotional revenge stories like this one, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Trust me, you'll want to stay until the end of this story. That evening, I picked Lily up from my mom's house. The moment she got into the car, something felt wrong. She wasn't talking. Normally, she'd tell me 100 stories about her day before. I even backed out of the driveway. "Sweetheart, are you okay?" I asked. She nodded without looking at me. But I knew my daughter. Something had happened. When we got home, she quietly went to her room. A few minutes later, I walked in and found her sitting on the floor, hugging her backpack. "Lay?" She looked up at me with red, watery eyes. Then she asked a question that made my stomach drop. "Man, are we homeless?" For a second, I couldn't even process what I'd heard. "What?" Her little lip trembled. "Grandma said we're probably going to lose everything. She said you can barely pay the bills and that I should get used to being homeless." I felt like all the air had been sucked out of the room. My daughter was only 8 years old. 8. No child should ever have to hear something like that from anyone, especially not from her own grandmother. I sat beside her and wrapped my arms around her. "Listen to me," I said firmly. "You are safe. You have a home, and nobody gets to make you feel scared like that." She nodded, but I could tell the damage had already been done. That night, after Lily fell asleep, I sat alone in my kitchen replaying those words over and over. My own mother had looked my little girl in the eye and told her she might be homeless. I wanted to scream. I wanted to call her immediately and demand an explanation. But then something happened that changed everything. The next morning, I received a phone call from someone who had witnessed the entire conversation, and what they told me was far worse than anything Lily had repeated. That's when I realized my mother had made a mistake she would soon regret. The next morning, I was halfway through my first cup of coffee when my phone rang. The caller ID showed my Aunt Carol's name. That immediately caught my attention. My aunt and mother talked almost every day, but Carol rarely called me directly. I answered, "Hey, Aunt Carol." There was a long pause on the other end. Then she said quietly, "Honey, I think you need to know what really happened yesterday." The serious tone in her voice made my chest tighten. I stepped into my bedroom and shut the door. "What do you mean?" Another pause. Then she told me everything. Apparently, Lily had been sitting at the kitchen table coloring while my mother and Aunt Carol were drinking coffee nearby. The conversation started when Lily proudly showed them a drawing of our apartment. According to Carol, my mother laughed. Not a warm laugh, a mocking one. Then she looked at Lily and said, "That's not much of a home, sweetheart." Lily had looked confused. "What do you mean?" My mother shrugged. "I mean, your mom's always struggling with money. People who struggle with money lose their homes." My aunt immediately told her to stop, but my mother kept going. "Maybe you should start preparing yourself." Carol said Lily looked scared. Then my mother leaned closer and delivered the sentence that made my blood boil. "One day you'll come home and find out you're homeless." When Carol confronted her, my mother actually laughed. As if terrifying an 8-year-old child was some kind of joke. I felt physically sick listening to the story, but Carol wasn't finished. "There was something else," she said. My stomach sank. "What?" Lily started crying. I closed my eyes. The image of my little girl crying in front of my mother made my hand shake. "What did Mom do?" Carol sighed heavily. "Nothing." Those single words hurt more than I expected. Nothing. No apology. No comfort. No reassurance. Nothing. Instead, according to Carol, my mother rolled her eyes and said, "Kids these days are too sensitive." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. For years, I had tolerated my mother's criticism. She criticized my clothes, my career choices, my divorce, my parenting, my apartment, my finances. Practically every decision I'd ever made. But attacking my daughter was crossing a line she had never crossed before. And unlike every other time, I wasn't willing to let it go. A few hours later, my phone rang again. This time it was my mother. The timing almost felt funny, as if she somehow sensed that I knew. I answered calmly. Hello. She immediately started talking about something completely unrelated. The weather, a neighbor, a television show, as though nothing had happened. Finally, I interrupted her. Why did you tell Lily she's going to be homeless? Silence. For several seconds, she didn't answer. Then she scoffed. Oh, for heaven's sake. Not an apology. Not even a denial. Just annoyance. As though I was the problem. You upset her. I was being realistic. But she's 8. Kids need to learn how the world works. I could feel anger building inside me. The kind of anger that starts deep in your chest. The kind that makes your heartbeat echo in your ears. She's a child. My mother laughed. Actually laughed. Then she said something that changed everything. Maybe if you made better life choices, she wouldn't have to worry about those things. The room went completely silent. I realized something in that moment. This wasn't about Lily. It wasn't even about money. My mother enjoyed making me feel small. She always had. For years, she had treated every hardship in my life like proof that she was superior. And now she was using my daughter to continue doing it. I expected myself to argue, to defend myself, to fight. Instead, I surprised both of us. I simply said one word, okay. My mother sounded confused. Okay? Yep. That was it. No yelling, no debate, no emotional reaction. Just one calm word. Okay. She hung up a few minutes later, probably feeling victorious. She thought she'd won. She thought I was backing down. What she didn't know was that I had finally reached my limit. For the first time in my life, I wasn't interested in changing her behavior. I was interested in changing her access. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table after Lily went to bed. I opened my laptop. Then I started making a list, a very detailed list, every favor I'd done for my mother, every account I managed for her, every appointment I scheduled, every bill I paid online because she didn't know how, every responsibility she had quietly handed to me over the years. By midnight, the list was 3 pages long, and as I stared at it, a slow smile appeared on my face. Because for the first time, I realized something important. My mother needed me far more than I needed her. And within a few days, she was about to discover exactly what that meant. The next morning, I woke up feeling strangely calm. Not happy, not satisfied, just calm. For most of my life, my mother had controlled every emotional situation between us. She knew exactly how to push my buttons. She could make me feel guilty, angry, embarrassed, or inadequate with just a few words. But something had changed. The moment she dragged my daughter into her games, a switch flipped inside me. I wasn't fighting for myself anymore. I was protecting Lily, and that made me stronger than I'd ever been before. For the next few days, I didn't call my mother. I didn't text her. I didn't argue with her. I simply started removing myself from every responsibility. I had been caring for her. The first thing I stopped doing was managing her finances. Years earlier, my mother had asked me to help her set up online bill payments because she didn't understand technology. That little favor eventually turned into me handling almost everything: electric bills, internet bills, insurance payments, appointment reminders, account passwords, bank notifications, everything. I had become her unpaid personal assistant, and she had come to expect it. So I logged out every account, every reminder, every calendar notification, every automatic system I managed. Gone. Then I made a simple document containing all her account information and passwords. I printed it, put it in an envelope, and mailed it to her house. No note, no explanation, just the information she needed to manage her own life. I wasn't sabotaging her. I was simply returning responsibility to its rightful owner. 3 days later, my phone exploded with missed calls. 12 of them, all from my mother. Then came the texts. Why isn't my internet working? Did you forget to pay something? Call me immediately. What is going on? I looked at the messages and smiled. For years, she had treated me like a failure. Now she couldn't even figure out her own utility accounts without me. I didn't respond. Not yet. Meanwhile, something much more important was happening. I was focusing on Lily. The night after my conversation with Aunt Carol, I noticed she was still worried. She kept asking strange questions. Questions children shouldn't have to ask. Mom, if people become homeless, where do they sleep? Mom, what happens if we lose our apartment? Mom, do you have enough money? Every question felt like a knife twisting deeper, because I knew exactly where those fears came from. One evening, I sat beside her on the couch. Sweetheart, can we talk? She nodded. I took a deep breath. You know, Grandma was wrong, right? Lily looked down. I think so. No, not think so. No, so. She looked up at me. I continued. We have a home. She nodded. We have food. Another nod. We have everything we need. Yes. And most importantly, we have each other. At that point, tears filled her eyes. Then she wrapped her arms around me. I was scared. My heart shattered. I know. I thought maybe I did something wrong. Those words nearly broke me. Children always blame themselves. That's what makes emotional cruelty so damaging. The people hurting them move on. The children carry the fear. I hugged her tighter. You did absolutely nothing wrong. That conversation became a turning point. Over the next week, Lily slowly started acting like herself again. The laughter returned. The smiles returned. The endless questions returned. And with every passing day, I became more determined that my mother would never have the opportunity to hurt her again. Then came Friday, the day everything finally started unraveling for my mother. I was grocery shopping when my phone rang. Again. Mun. I answered this time. Hello. Her voice was furious. What is wrong with you? I calmly pushed my cart down the aisle. I'm not sure what you mean. Stop playing games. I'm not. My insurance payment was late. I said nothing. My internet got disconnected. Still nothing. And I missed a medical appointment. Finally, I spoke. That sounds frustrating. The silence that followed was almost funny. She wasn't used to this version of me. She was used to emotional reactions, defensiveness, arguments, apologies. Instead, she was getting complete calmness. What happened to all the reminders? She demanded. I stopped managing them. You can't just stop. I can. Another long silence. Then she said something unbelievable. I needed your help. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was ironic. After spending years telling me how incompetent I was, she suddenly needed my help. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. You seem to have managed just fine telling my daughter she's going to be homeless. Immediately, her tone changed. Oh, we're still talking about that? Still talking about that, as if traumatizing an 8-year-old child was some minor misunderstanding. I realized then that she truly didn't understand the damage she'd caused. Or worse, she didn't care. I need you to start handling everything again, she said. No. The answer came out instantly. Firm. Final. No. No. You owe me. That one sentence nearly made me laugh again. Owe her? After years of free labor? After years of criticism? After what she'd done to Lily? Absolutely not. I don't owe you anything. The silence that followed felt different. For the first time, I think she realized she was losing control. And she hated it. The next day, things became even more interesting. My Aunt Carol called. Your mother is furious. I wasn't surprised. Carol laughed. Actually, she's panicking. Now that surprised me. Panicking? Apparently, she's telling everyone that you've abandoned her. I shook my head. Classic. She wasn't telling people the truth. She wasn't telling them she'd emotionally hurt her granddaughter. She wasn't telling them she'd spent years treating me like garbage. No, she was playing the victim, the role she loved most. But then Carol said something unexpected. People aren't taking her side. I stopped walking. What? They know how much you've done for her. I felt a lump form in my throat because I hadn't realized people notice. Apparently they had. Everyone knew who drove her to appointments. Everyone knew who managed her paperwork. Everyone knew who solved her problems. And now they were asking the same question. If she's such a terrible daughter, why was she doing all that for you? For once, my mother's narrative wasn't working. People were starting to connect the dots. And the pressure was building. But what I didn't know was that the biggest shock was still coming. Because only 2 days later, my mother would show up somewhere she hadn't been invited. And what happened there would completely change our relationship forever. 2 days later, I finally understood why my Aunt Carol had sounded so concerned. It was Saturday afternoon. Lily and I were attending a small community event at her school. Parents, teachers, and children filled the playground. There were games, food tables, and little booths set up around the field. For the first time in weeks, Lily seemed completely happy. She was laughing with friends, running around, and acting like a normal 8-year-old again. Seeing that smile on her face meant everything to me. Then I saw a familiar car pull into the parking lot. My stomach dropped. My mother, I hadn't invited her. Neither had Lily. Yet, there she was. The moment she stepped out of her car, I knew she wasn't there to apologize. She looked angry, determined, like someone who believed she was about to win an argument. I quietly told Lily to stay with her friends while I walked toward my mother. "What are you doing here?" I asked. She crossed her arms. "We need to talk." "No, we really don't." Several nearby parents glanced in our direction. My mother lowered her voice. "You've embarrassed me enough." I almost laughed. Embarrassed her? She had frightened an 8-year-old child. Yet somehow she was the victim. "You embarrassed yourself." Her face immediately hardened. Then she made a mistake. A huge mistake. She pointed toward Lily. "This whole thing is ridiculous. Kids get upset. She'll get over it." The second those words left her mouth, something changed inside me. Not anger. Clarity. Complete clarity. Because she still didn't understand. Not after all these weeks. Not after all the consequences. Not after everyone around her started questioning her behavior. She still believed she had done nothing wrong. That's when I realized an apology was never coming. And honestly, I didn't need one anymore. I looked directly into her eyes. "You don't get access to my daughter anymore." For a moment, she simply stared at me. Then she laughed. Actually laughed. "You can't be serious." I've never been more serious. The smile disappeared from her face. "You would keep my granddaughter away from me?" I nodded. "Yes." Her eyes widened. "You don't have the right." At that point, I almost couldn't believe what I was hearing. I was Lily's mother. Of course I had the right. What she really meant was that she wasn't used to hearing the word no, especially from me. For decades, everyone around her had adjusted to her behavior, excused it, tolerated it, enabled it. I wasn't doing that anymore. The conversation ended badly. Very badly. She accused me of being dramatic, ungrateful, immature, vindictive. Then she stormed back to her car and drove away. As I watched her leave, I expected to feel guilty. Instead, I felt relief. Pure relief. For the first time in my life, I wasn't carrying her emotional baggage anymore. I wasn't trying to fix her. I wasn't trying to earn her approval. I was done. Over the next several weeks, life became surprisingly peaceful. Lily continued healing. Our home felt lighter, calmer, safer. The constant criticism and negativity were gone, and something incredible happened. I started realizing how much emotional energy I had spent managing my mother's behavior. Without that burden, I had more energy for work, more energy for my daughter, more energy for myself. Then came the moment that changed everything. About 6 weeks after the school event, I received an unexpected phone call, not from my mother, from her doctor. At first, I was confused. The doctor explained that my mother had listed me as her emergency contact years earlier. Normally, I would have immediately stepped in to help, but things were different now. The office informed me that my mother had missed several important appointments, the same appointments I used to schedule and remind her about. Suddenly, everything clicked. For years, she had treated me like I was worthless. Yet she had quietly built her life around my support, and now that support was gone. Not because I hurt her, not because I sabotaged her, because I stopped allowing myself to be used. A few days later, my Aunt Carol called again. "Your mother wants to talk." I sighed. Does she want to apologize? Silence. That silence told me everything. "No," Carol admitted. "Then I don't have anything to discuss." Another week passed, then another. Eventually, something unexpected happened. One evening, there was a knock on my apartment door. I opened it, and there she stood, my mother. But she looked different. Not angry, not arrogant, not confrontational, just tired, very tired. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she quietly said something I never expected to hear. "Can we talk?" I hesitated, then stepped outside and closed the door behind me. "What do you want?" For the first time in my life, my mother looked nervous. Actually nervous. Her eyes filled with tears. I made mistakes. I remained silent. She looked down. Then she said the words I had waited months to hear. I shouldn't have said those things to Lily. I studied her face carefully, trying to decide whether she meant it or whether she simply wanted things to go back to the way they were. Finally, she continued. I thought I was teaching her about reality. She shook her head. I didn't realize I was scaring her. Part of me wanted to believe her. Another part remembered every tear Lily had cried, every fearful question, every sleepless night. Trust doesn't magically return because someone apologizes. Trust returns when behavior changes, and that takes time. "I accept your apology," I said. Her eyes widened slightly. "But that doesn't mean everything goes back to normal." She nodded slowly, almost as if she expected that answer. Then I told her something she needed to hear. "The biggest problem wasn't what you said." She looked confused. "It was that you didn't care after you said it." That sentence hit her hard. I could see it. Because it was true. Anyone can make a mistake. But refusing to acknowledge the damage afterward is a choice. For the first time, she had no defense, no excuse, no comeback, just silence. Over the next several months, our relationship remained distant. Careful, controlled, and honestly, that was healthy. She gradually earned small opportunities to see Lily again, supervised visits, short conversations, boundaries, lots of boundaries. And whenever those boundaries weren't respected, access stopped immediately. Something amazing happened because of that. My mother slowly began changing. Not overnight, not perfectly, but genuinely. For perhaps the first time in her life, she realized actions have consequences, and relationships are privileges, not guarantees. As for Lily, she thrived, absolutely thrived. A year later, she was happier than ever, confident, funny, kind, and completely free from the fear my mother had planted in her mind. One evening, while we were eating dinner together, Lily looked around our apartment and smiled. "I love our home." I smiled back. "So do I." Then she said something that nearly brought tears to my eyes. "We may not be rich, but we're lucky." I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You're right. You're right." Because she was. We weren't wealthy. We didn't live in a giant house. We didn't have luxury cars. But we had something far more valuable: peace, love, safety. And nobody could take that away from us. Looking back now, I realize the real revenge wasn't humiliating my mother. It wasn't winning an argument. It wasn't cutting her off. The real revenge was refusing to let her define our lives. The real revenge was building a happy life without her control. The real revenge was protecting my daughter and showing her what healthy boundaries look like. My mother thought frightening an 8-year-old child would make her feel powerful. Instead, it cost her the very thing she valued most: unrestricted access to the people she loved. And that lesson changed all of us forever. Today, Lily knows something I wish I had learned much earlier in life. Being family doesn't give someone permission to hurt you, and loving someone doesn't mean accepting their bad behavior. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can say is the simplest word in the world: okay. Because sometimes okay isn't surrender. Sometimes it's the moment you stop arguing, start acting, and take your life back. And that's exactly how this story ended. If you've made it this far, tell me, what country are you watching from? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more emotional revenge stories. Thank you for watching.